Hi, I'm Reggie Turner. I'm here with Terrence Moore and Jim Miller. The FlipSide starts right now. Welcome to the show. Gentlemen, we are back. And for us, it's always election season, but we are officially
in
election season for voters as well. I know during the summer lull, many may not have been paying attention, but now is the time where candidates are getting out into the community. One of the articles that we have for tonight was that the Maryland ballot drop boxes have been placed and installed for voters. And there's some key dates before we jump into this that I want to make sure that our audience is aware of. So as of September 23rd, the ballot boxes began to arrive for voters.
Well, well, the ballot boxes and the ballots for mail-in voters that are what are called permanent mail-in voters, which I didn't even know that was a thing.
I did not either.
I am a permanent voter. I did fill out the application, and from now on, I will always get mailed-in ballots sent to me.
And it's still your choice of how you.
I can always opt out of it. I can still go to the polling if I choose to, but they will always send me a ballot by mail.
But if you if you didn't vote that ballot by mail, there's not even a question of which ballot counts because it'll automatically default to the
correct
in-person ballot.
Yes.
Gotcha. So those were sent out on the 23rd. To voters. The next key date is October 15th. That is the deadline to register to vote for those that would like to vote by mail on October the 15th. The next key date would be October the 29th, which is the deadline to request the mail-in ballot to be delivered by mail. To me, that's pushing it a little close from the 29th to Election Day on the 5th, but the 29th of October is the deadline to request a mail-in ballot.
They're counting on the USPS
to come through in the clutch, right? Then November 1st is the deadline to request the mail-in ballot to be delivered online.
Which I found interesting.
Yes. And then obviously Election Day this year is November the 5th. And that is the deadline to complete and to return your mail-in ballots, and then I guess they need to be postmarked,
right,
or dropped in the box,
right. But here's the other thing that's important for our viewers, because not everyone is registered to vote, and you talked about October 15th being the deadline to register to vote for those that are voting by mail. My understanding is you can register to vote on Election Day if you're doing the walk-in,
if you're walking
traditional ballot, which is I think is great.
Yes.
As it should be, right.
I think that's great. I think that's a nice change. I don't know who else in the union does that, but I think that's a good thing for Maryland.
Yes.
Yeah, and to point out that online request comes to you via email, and then you print that out and then you mail that back. So that's what the online request is. That's why it's still so close to the date on November 1st.
Gotcha.
And of course, we would be remiss if we didn't mention that we have a group of professionals in Washington County that help with our part of it, and there's a number in there for the Maryland State Elections Board. There's a phone number you can call if you have questions, and I'm sure our local people would be glad to answer questions as well. We've had the former and now the current head of that on the show several times.
Yes.
And always a good discussion.
And always looking for volunteers to support that as well. Paid volunteers that actually support our election process as well locally.
And I know that they're currently in the midst of looking for volunteers. Volunteers have been down.
I heard that. I didn't know whether they were still looking or not, but
I have seen some correspondence online,
okay,
on social media where they were still requesting and looking for paid volunteers for those efforts.
Do we know where any of the ballot boxes are in Washington County?
If I remember correctly, like if I'm thinking like kind of the core of the city, there's one on Franklin Street, right across from University Plaza. I believe there's one.
Washington is one on Washington.
Well, I meant Washington Street in regards to that. That's the only one that kind of resonates with me. I don't spend a lot of time in city limits, but
I believe one was by the library as well.
Yeah.
if I
That
can
would make
recall.
sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
But across the state, there's 286 of these ballot drop boxes.
Which, yeah, that actually seems low to me.
That did seem low to me as well.
I don't know why, but that just seemed low. Because I mean, you think about it, we got what, 24 counties, right?
Yeah, but every mailbox is also a drop box.
Well, that's
and
true.
and especially in communities, that you have your personal mailbox system that you can slide and vote. So I believe this is just probably filling in the
Supplementing,
gap
yeah.
and supplementing where you don't have as many street mailboxes anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's great advertising for people to get out and vote, and as a reminder as well. So they are many billboards as well as reminders for people to vote.
Yeah, so as you're driving through communities, you're going to see these boxes. It's in your face. It's a reminder
Yes.
of the ease of access to be able to do so. The other thing this article talks about is that in the pandemic, obviously, the numbers skyrocketed of those that were doing mail-in votes. And even though that's come down since then, the numbers are still high in regards to those that are taking advantage of it.
Absolutely. I remember when I was younger, like when you had a parent that worked in the evenings that came home, who had to, grab the kids, get everything taken care of, and go then stand in line and be in that line for hours to make sure that vote counted. And that was a process for my parents as well, based on their work schedule. I think this is a needed change to make sure that everybody's vote count and they have the ability to vote, especially when you may work well outside your
Right.
Polling areas, and then you have to travel back home, then go stand in line. And we hear about it all the time, people standing in line. Of course, if you are in line, you do get allowed to vote before the polls close, but at the same time, we shouldn't make voting an inconvenience.
Right. For me personally, I just remember, understanding and learning in school, that my grandmother's right to vote was significantly later in her life, and she never took that for granted. She lived into her 90s, and she was one of the first, or not, if not the first, at the polling site in our little rural community in Appomattox, Virginia, to vote. And so for me, I like the convenience of mail-in voting, but I'm nostalgic for kind of following in the footsteps of grandma to walk and be there. And I just remember, when my girls were younger, I remember taking, my oldest with me, to go before. So I'm nostalgic for old school. However, I do like the convenience of that, because obviously as we get older, life changes, our circumstances changes, how we move around changes. If you have an illness or something of that nature, having that flexibility.
I never want to say life happens and I wasn't able to vote.
Yes.
And I think that's what the biggest change is. And again, I'm just like you. I remember being a kid going to the polling station, wondering what was going on behind that curtain, and which made it an obligation when I turned 18. Like I can't wait that baton gets passed. And I never felt personally that I didn't want my vote to count and I wasn't going to show up. But so if anyone who are parents out there, if you can make your children part of that voting process, it may be great for you to take them to the polls if you can, at least for the first time or a couple of times, for them to see what that process looked like. It's not as, I guess you could do it in your home as well. You can go out your way to really make it an experience. So the next generation sees the value of voting and sees the process and understands it, but it takes a little bit more effort if you're not going to the polling station and you're kind of filling out a couple of bubbles on a scantron.
Yeah, and there's something, you call it nostalgia, but I think there's something special about showing up at the voting location. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I just, I'm proud of the fact that we as a country have the right to vote.
Agreed.
By the way, I checked. There are actually 7 locations in Washington County. Hancock Town Hall is one. Williamsport Town Hall is one. In Hagerstown, we have the Washington County Free Library, and we also have our voting center on Virginia Avenue at the old Food Lion. We have one at Smithsburg Town Hall. We have one at Boonesboro Town Hall. And we have one at Keedysville Town Hall.
Okay.
So those are the drop-off locations, the drop boxes in Washington County, and they have to be turned in by 8 p.m. on November 5th.
Right.
That'll be the last collection.
You know, you were talking, we were both talking about nostalgia and wanting to be a part of the process and do it. You know, the other thing is, in recent election cycles, with the number of volunteers going down and, the threats against election workers in different states and all the contention, relative to ballots and, perceived voter fraud and all of those things, I just remember the last election cycle and, some of my neighbors who I see walking and passing were volunteers, and I got an opportunity to engage with that I hadn't engaged with before, but also to say thank you, because that's a thankless job in the society that we live in now. And their efforts are much appreciated, and it's just like, wow, you guys have been doing this election cycle after election cycle, and you're still with it, on the other side of COVID. So, I mean, that's something to be appreciated.
We also have to keep in mind technology advances. We are even our generation had parents that knew of people who were still fighting for the right to vote. That still was instilled, that was still passed down. I think we're a couple of generations now past that, where it becomes historic. It's history. It's not lived. It's not told. So you don't get that connection. So it's more of a process now for going through election, and we've seen it as we've seen each generation have less and less registered voters. And I just think having this opportunity to use, even though it's still a mail service, and even now we have some email tied in there, but using some of these ways that are going to really relate to a generation that don't even want to pick up a telephone anymore, right? To really understand and take advantage. And I include myself in that as far as technology, but I think we have to advance forward. And that nostalgia isn't nostalgic for this generation. Yeah. So I really believe that this is a large step forward. Unfortunately, it took COVID for us to realize it.
Yeah. So here's my last question for you on this topic. Jim, when you go into the voting booth, are you a touchscreen or do you fill in with the pencil?
I don't really care. I've done both. The last couple of times I've done the fill in.
Yeah, I'm a pencil guy. Like I'm still, I'm old school. I'm a pencil guy. I gotta fill in, and I don't want to do the touch screen. Terrence?
Oh, mine comes in the mail.
Okay,
I automatically I have to use a pen. I gotta fill in those bubbles, and I make sure they get real dark and real precise too, because there's some error that can be tied into that as well. So please read it as well. Don't take for granted that it's a piece of paper you get to check boxes, because you can vote and it not be counted if you don't fill in those circles the right way.
Well, I have PTSD
Hanging
from
Chad.
taking the SATs back,
Exactly.
back in school. Like this,
Exactly.
I'll study for this SAT. I got to get this right.
I kind of told my age just now when I said Scantron.
Yeah.
Oh man, hey gentlemen, let's jump into the races a little bit. So on the Senate side, for our area, we have the Senate election. The main two candidates, we have former Governor Larry Hogan running against Angela Also Brooks. And it's funny because, we haven't been together in a while, but at the end of August, there was a poll that came out that basically showed that race tied. And that caught my attention because it was soon after I was predicting that after things settled down, that Also Brooks would still be up by 6 or so points outside the margin of error. So I was really concerned that I really didn't know what I was talking about, and I was kind of falling into the Jim category on these election things. However, since that poll, we've had 3 polls that have come out in September. We had a Gonzalez research poll that came out September the 4th. Also Brooks was up 5. We had a Hill Emerson poll that came out on the 17th. Also Brooks was up 7. And then we had a PPP, public policy poll, that came out on the 19th, and Also Brooks was up 15.
17, I believe.
50? This one is 15.
Oh, okay. The September 19th?
September 19th.
Okay, I had it 50-33 in favor of Also Brooks.
Sometimes when you look at those sites and pollings, they're looking at the average as opposed to a specific poll. Wow. So you can get confused in regards to that. I'm pretty certain this one is talking about that specific poll.
Okay.
In regards to that, I guess what we can say is that race is outside the margin of error. However, this week it looks like that there's an October surprise is coming a little early in that race. Angela also Brooks has been found to have accepted some tax credits that she was not eligible for on a property that she had basically assumed from her family.
And a property she sold.
And a property she sold to the tune of like $14,000 or so on one. So there's a little hubbub around that.
Yeah.
I don't know if
I think that's going to be short-lived.
Yeah, I agree as well, but I think the thing for Angela is that, you know, she gave her an interview where she claimed that she didn't know and that she just made the payments on behalf of her grandmother. But there was more digging done by CNN, and that was proved not to be true. Like, she had owned this property, she had, you know, taken out 4 mortgages on it, all of which she paid back, but she was the owner. It wasn't as if she was making payments for grandma and it was her name and then she finally assumed the property. Yeah. She owned the property since the early 2000s. So,
yeah. First about polls. I can't stand polls, right? I think polls are number manipulation. I'm telling you. And
but this is TV. You can't say that here.
It's the truth. It
is absolutely the truth.
It's the truth. And
of course, you would say that, Jim.
And then it causes reaction because look at the dates when these polls come out, and then all of a sudden there's that early October surprise that come out because people are reacting to the polls and they're trying to lessen the margin.
Drive the wedge.
Right, yes. Right. And then you talk about the tax credit era. Also found that because she wasn't claiming the tax credit on her own home, she actually lost money in the deal. So when everything's said and done, they're going to cut her a check. Yeah. so maybe because her accounting was off, we should be a little concerned about that because of the office she worked for. She should have been more familiar about the laws and processes. But ultimately, I agree, Jim. I think it's going to be short-lived.
Yeah.
I think it was. Sometimes it's better not to even use that because it looks like you're reacting in fear.
Well, let's look at the 3 polls for what they are. First of all, PPP, public policy polling, is admittedly and unabashedly a Democratic-leaning firm out of Raleigh, North Carolina.
But that's why that's an outlier. That's an outlier just as much.
They polled 543 registered voters. Mm-hmm. And the 50 to 33 that I quoted was not included Scott at 6% support and 12% undecided. What did you say? 52 and 37?
52-37.
Okay, so that was with Scott excluded, then it's 52 to 37. So that's the difference. But 543 registered voters. The Emerson College poll, Emerson College is in Boston, conducted the poll, and it conducted it on behalf of DC News Now and The Hill. The poll was funded by the news organization, and now it drops down to a 9% delta. 890 likely voters, Maryland voters. And then the last one, the Gonzalez research, is probably the one that if I was going to put weight in polls, and like you, I don't, that's the one I'd put the most weight in just because they are known as a premier Maryland polling firm.
I agree.
And they have it's 5 points in favor of also Brooks, but it's a statistical dead heat because margin of error is 5 points.
Yeah, I agree.
So what did we learn here? Nothing.
Right.
And what do we learn from most polls? Nothing. Do you remember in 2016 when Hillary Clinton was going to win by a landslide?
It was different.
Listen, you ask 100 children if you like candy, you know the outcome, right? So, like I'm just saying, I just think when you look at those, the sample sizes are so small.
That's exactly
and they're
right.
so skewed, and especially how diverse our state is and country in whole. Like it's hard to put any stock in it. But what it does do is manipulates true voters, because now you're telling people how to vote because people want to vote for a winner. Right, so there's some skewing that happens and some media manipulation that happens with polling. And again, they say men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Yes, they do. Right? You can make them lie, and that's why polling really doesn't hold any weight. What I do watch is reactions.
But I look at the trends. The trends of polling does say something because it's different service using different metrics for their polling. The trends have said for quite a while that Also Brooks has some fashion of a lead. We may agree or we may disagree, but when we agree or disagree on this show, we lay down a marker. So let's lay down a marker. Jim, where are you today? Who and by how many points?
Hogan's going to squeak by.
Are we going to need a recount on this?
No.
Hogan's going to squeak by?
Yeah.
Couple points?
Couple points.
Mr. Moore.
Also, Brooks takes it. Slim margin, but she comes out on top. And again, I'm on the record of saying it, and I'll be clear, and I'll say what most people don't want to say. She's going to get the black woman vote, right? There's a bump that comes with Harris coming into the election as well. There's a bump that comes with registered voters shooting through the roof over the last 6 weeks.
Right.
Like, that's a bump she's going to benefit from. And again, not saying she's not qualified, not saying, but there are going to be more people that come out to the polls that will more likely vote for her.
I'm still where I was before the polling.
Which was?
I'm still Also Brooks, 4 or 5 points.
Okay.
I'm still in the same place. Nothing has changed in the place to upset the apple cart. Again, this reaction in regards to the kind of the tax credit situation speaks to that. Shows a little bit of panic.
I'll say this. Hogan's not going to get able to go to sleep early like he did during the primary.
No.
Right? I can say that. I can tell you that.
He's not gonna give you the good night.
Right. So
Yumi, let's go. Good night.
And honestly, I don't believe either one of them would be able to. I think the margin is going to be so slim that we're going to have to watch the mail-in votes come in, which is another byproduct of mail-in votes that we really don't see decided elections in most cases till 2-3 days later.
But normally Democrats are winning mail-in votes by like a 2-1 margin in most of these races, especially in a state like ours. So if we're waiting for the mail-in votes, that favors Democrats.
For most candidates, I still think Hogan has a Democratic constituency.
He
that's
absolutely
going to vote for him.
does. He absolutely does. And the question is, the Republicans that don't like him because he's too centrist,
Right.
are they going to vote for Also Brooks?
Exactly.
No.
Right.
And if they come out to vote for Trump, Hogan's my man.
All right. Well, Jim, I appreciate the fact that you took the other side of this because there's going to be a winner and a loser.
That's right.
And that's how it should be between us.
That's right.
All right, now let's move on. I think that this race is not going to be, that's going to be a 4 or 5 point race. Now let's talk about this House race, Congressional District 6. Now, this is going to be a tougher race. Now, here's the other thing about this race.
What, tougher than 4 or 5 points?
Absolutely it is. This race, there's not a lot of polling. There's even less polling on that one. So there's been 2 polls in the last few months. The first poll was Delaney was up 2. The latest poll says that Parrott is up 2. And I did look deeper within that polling, and what that polling showed is in the western 3 counties, Garrett, Allegheny, Washington County, Parrott had about a 75% vote share, which is higher than what Trone had. Frederick was about the same, about an 8-9 point gap in favor of Delaney.
Oh, in favor of Delaney.
In favor of Delaney. Then when you looked at Montgomery County, her margin was less at this point than what Trone's was. Because obviously the redistricting changed things, so less of Montgomery County is being included. And I look back to the 2022 results, and Trone received as many votes in Montgomery County as Parrott did in Allegheny, Garrett, and Washington altogether. It was about 50,000 votes that he got from Montgomery County those 3 counties gave him about 50,000 votes. Presidential election, the numbers are going to be up. I'm gonna come to you, Terrence. What say you on this race? What are you saying?
Parrott's campaigning strategy is unique.
Covert.
Yes.
Non-existent.
Right.
He's got very nice metal signs there.
Right. They've been up for 12 years.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know how to call. I don't know where direction he's coming from. He's sitting back, and he did the same thing with Trone.
Yes.
And kind of, had some impact
until the mail-in votes came from Frederick and Montgomery County.
Right. So I don't know if he's really leaning in the red districts in the area that's going to come out and vote down party line, or he's not coming out because he doesn't want to make a slip because the margins may be so thin. But I'm not sure if he's even in the race, right? It just doesn't seem that he's out there, that he's public, that he's campaigning. Either he's not concerned or he really doesn't want it. I don't see the activity behind him.
The one thing that I saw when I looked at the research behind that polling, even though Delaney's husband was the representative in this district, she does not have the name recognition.
She absolutely does not.
People do not know her.
Right.
And here's my theory, and Jim, and you take it from here. But my theory is that Trone had originally won the district when it was gerrymandered.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So after he won it the first time, he could use his money and things that he's done in the district to help him win it again, right? My point is that number one, Delaney is not there. The family's not spending a lot of their personal wealth on this race. She's been going after money from D.C. and cobbling together money for this race.
She doesn't have to.
But here's my point though. Trump spent about $15 million on this race last time. She's probably spent like $3 million at this point. And the point is that Trone could saturate the Western District no matter how much time he spent in it, whether it was a little or a lot. She hasn't been here. She hasn't been in these Western counties at all. Like, it seems like the Delaney strategy is Frederick.
Yeah. And that shows because she has a 44 to 29% lead. 44% for her, 29% for Parrott in Frederick. Here's an interesting...
If that holds, she will win.
Maybe.
Who has come out here, though? Let's be honest.
Well, Parrott lives here.
And Parrott lives here. Is he campaigning here?
No.
Right. And let's look at all the races.
Nobody's here.
Nobody's coming over the mountain, it doesn't feel like.
Hogan came on his bus, waved at everybody, and he's been out. He came to the ballpark, he's been out. Right. That's been it. But the thing is, for Hogan has a track record of what he's done here in the western part of the state, right? Parrott didn't pass much legislation when he was in office.
Nope, he didn't.
He was railing against the Democrats downstate, but there wasn't many things that he got done. But for Delaney, without name recognition, without being here, and basically the polling is showing that Parrott has the name recognition and is driving a wider gap.
By being quiet. That's what I'm saying.
By being quiet.
Like, not making a mistake. Don't make no ill steps, Jim.
So, 2 months to go.
Yep.
51% of 6th district voters say they don't know who Delaney is.
Absolutely.
That's a problem.
Absolutely it is.
That's a huge problem. I'm wondering when she's going to introduce herself to her constituents.
It's going to, Terrence always schools me on this. It's going to be the October push.
Listen, I don't know why we campaigned for so long. It's a 90-day race. And I think people are starting to realize that. People are starting to control their money the right way and use their money to concentrate because...
To hit it at the end.
Right, top of mind.
Well, that's what also Brooks did.
Absolutely.
Running against Trone.
Right.
She held all her fire to the last, 60 days?
30.
Yeah.
Right. That's when the big push happened, and that's when she started spending, and that's when You know, the governor stepped in and you're supporting your endorsements because it's top of mind.
And the thing is that, Jim, if you're looking at the numbers of that, there is a large amount of undecideds.
There are, absolutely. And also, by the way, this was a very small sample. It was like 350, 325
And
votes.
that's the other thing. It's not a lot of polling that
No.
comes out on these House races that you guys don't like polls anyway.
So Delaney's key points in her last communication was her communication that came out yesterday. It's 42 days until Election Day. She hit Parrott on three things: that he defended January 6th insurrection, that he's supporting the complete ban on abortions, and Parrott has championed efforts to defund public schools and undermining the quality of education of our children. Those are targeted. Those are targeted to a population of individuals that either didn't vote in the primaries, right, or just registered to vote.
Right.
And it's just same way I say with also Brooks as well. I think there's a population of individuals that are going to come out who just got interested in voting, that these are the things that are just raising these red flags and saying, this is how you vote.
Right.
And it goes party lines, and I think that's what she's doing right now. I really, next month, we'll see everybody come over the mountain next month, right?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's going to come through and pass through and say hello, which is interesting to me. Again, I'll say something that's probably not popular, but this has been happening in African-American communities ever since. Right? I remember as a kid, all of a sudden on church on Sundays, every politician showed up and made their spiel.
Well, that's if you remember last election cycle, the Maryland Speaker, Adrian Jones,
Yep.
came and marched down Johnson Street with David Trone.
Right.
Yeah.
So and I'm watching
the local little Democrats.
and I'm watching it happen to an entire region right now.
Yeah.
Right. Here's the thing. Here's the other thing that's in Parrott's favor, though. Parrott is snatching 17% of Democratic votes in the district.
He's snatching more crossover votes than she is.
She's only getting 7%.
Right, because
of
people
Republican.
don't know who she is.
Right.
Who she is.
Right.
But what makes this race so uncertain is the large amount of people that are undecided. And like Terrence said, it's going to be the 30-day sprint that's going to decide it. But again, she's in trouble if the Western 3 counties stays at 75-15. Like, she's in trouble.
Well,
If
and
the-
the
if
other
the
thing
gap
is
stays
that
that wide.
Parrott at this point has not gone negative against April Delaney, but there's opportunity there. And you got to think he's thinking about that.
He may. I don't.
He
think
doesn't
will.
benefit from it.
No,
He's not going to, again,
because he has more of a track record. If you want to go slinging mud, like there's a lot that can be said in regards to kind of his history and things that he's done. I don't. But speak to why you don't think there's a benefit for him to do that.
again, I know viewers are going to send you all kinds of hate mail on this one, because it's hard to win as a white male right now. It's just the way it is. And to go on the attack on some of these issues that are out here right now, it's hard to go to defend yourself and not be on the attack and feel and look too aggressive. I'm saying he can possibly lose more support by coming out and addressing these issues and going on the defense and attacking back, because it's not going to benefit him. And because no one's listening to policy, there's no debates, there's no conversations happening.
But here's what there
It's
is.
social media.
Here's what there is. This is seen as one of the key races that may flip the House for the Republicans. And because the Republican wave that everybody predicted last term didn't happen, are there going to be Republican monies through PACs and all of that other stuff that are going to enter the race, that are going to start advertising on behalf of people?
I predicted it was going to come in last time, and that money didn't come in.
Well, but you know what? It's a new year, and they already got their rear end whooped once. Do they want to get it whooped again?
Where are you going to spend money?
Wherever you want.
Elections are won on social media now.
Yeah, okay. Well, you
They-
can spend money on social media. You can spend money on, it's all, you know what, and I don't disagree with you, but now that we are all have streaming services and stuff like that, there's a lot of election ads on that too. And I can't turn on YouTube without seeing an Also Brooks ad, right? Because I'm too cheap to pay the monthly fee to get the ad-free version, but that's beside the point.
Right, but what I'm saying is you can do just as much damage, and the price of some of that streaming ads and push on social media is you don't need big PAC money to come in. You can really do that. And you can do it with other people sharing and multiplying one ad if you get 1,000 people to share it.
Yeah.
Right? And you can manipulate that with chat bots and all other ways that you can really multiply and spend a lot less money to get your ads in front of everybody's, their feeds right now.
Well, and as we know, based on the Senate primary, just because you're willing to spend a lot of your personal fortune doesn't mean you're going to win the race.
No,
Exactly.
not at all.
Exactly. And I think, unfortunately, it's a popularity contest. Unfortunately, some of the things that shouldn't come into play when picking the right person to lead our state, our counties, our districts, doesn't take precedence.
My concern is I think that Western Maryland's in trouble because we're back to being relegated to be second-class citizens, and our issues are nowhere near on top of these things. And the local politics in Washington County is not good. I know that Democratic candidates have been tiptoeing around coming to this region because of a lot of the stuff that's happening. So it's going to be interesting. But let's lay our markers down. Let me go first this time in regards to laying our marker down on this race. So last election, Trump won it by 8-9 points. I don't think Delaney can win it by 8-9 points. I'm going Delaney by 4, 3 to 4. And much of what Delaney will win on is the enthusiasm in regards to voter registration is on the Democratic side. I think the rising tide of the top of the ticket, leading from the vice president to Angela Alsobrooks is going to give her enough boost when they run through here in October to get her to win, but it won't be by Trone's numbers.
Go ahead.
I'm saying Delaney wins on Wednesday. I believe it's going to be close again, but I believe similar to that push, I think she can get out and be top of mind a lot quicker than Parrott does. If Parrott decides to start campaigning, I think he let too much time pass by.
When you say she wins on Wednesday, you mean Wednesday after the election when the...
Yes.
Well, no, because Trone didn't even win that fast. It was some days that went by until those mail-in votes came in.
But I'm saying, but she wins by Wednesday.
Okay.
I figure by Wednesday, I think she'll have a lead enough that he won't be able to pick up any additional mail-in
I think
votes.
it's going to go a little bit past Wednesday. We're
You
going to
said
see.
this is my pick.
Well,
right?
oh, you taking the phone? I apologize for trying
this
to.
pick.
You know what? I apologize for trying to correct you on your pick. I was just trying to help you out. You know I'm normally right on these things, but my apologies, T.
I don't know what your definition normally is, but no, I believe by Wednesday, I think it'll be clear because I think it goes back to the same thing you said before, that Democrats have a bigger push in mail-in votes as well.
Yeah.
So I think she wins, but I think it's clear by Wednesday, and I believe, just predict over the next 6 weeks, that she's already been out. She has a number of events already lined up.
Yep.
She has some events that are tying herself to the governor as well.
The governor's wife.
Governor's
the
wife,
whole
yes,
thing.
absolutely. So I believe she keeps the momentum and keeps top of mind, and that pushes her over the top.
There you go. Jim, where are you, my friend? Are you predicting upset number 2 here?
I am. Parrott, 6 points.
Ooh.
Parrott, 6 points?
House changes hands.
Wow.
I don't know. I haven't looked at the
You're
bigger
calling
picture.
the shot.
You said 6 points.
6.
I appreciate the fact, Jim, as much as you've lost in the last 4 years, that you really went bold.
I am bold.
You
Go
really-
big or go home.
You definitely did that. Wow.
Parrott, 6 points. House changes hands.
I said 4. You said how many points?
I'm saying about 3.
Okay.
I would say 3.
3, and you're saying 6 in the other direction.
Whew. Parrott has put in the work. The world is run by those who show up. Nobody can disagree or agree with Neil Parrott. You can't argue that he hasn't shown up.
Well, we're all on the record. Listen, if data comes in or information comes in to the contrary, I will update my pick.
I'm sure you
Of
will.
course,
You're
yeah.
great at updating your
Hedging
pick.
his bet right already.
In fact, I think he claimed to win the last time because he updated it 10 minutes after the election. The results were
Well,
covered.
first and foremost, gentlemen, I haven't even brought the calculator in yet.
Let's
'Cause
go to
you
the
know-
videotape.
You know when the calculator comes out, I'm solid as ever. All right,
Okay.
well, gentlemen, let's wrap this up. Let's take a break, and then we'll come back and talk about some other topics.
All right.
All right, stay with us. We'll have more of the flip side after the break. Welcome back to the show. We're going to jump into our Fast Five tonight after our robust election coverage. First article, gentlemen, cannabis tax receipts reach new heights in Maryland. I want to go to our resident weed man.
Cannabis.
Our resident weed man, Mr. Terrence Moore. Terrence, floor is yours, sir.
There's no surprise here. We
Right.
expected this. With the legalization of recreational cannabis for adult use, that came in July officially with the passing of the law. We expected to see an increased use. Here locally, if you ever drive by the mall and go see one, I'm not going to name the dispensary specifically, you can see that the line usually extends outside of the building.
You said they run a Chick-fil-A type operation?
Well, but no,
It's my pleasure.
but we kind of spoke about this. We knew that there would be a lot more people experimenting and looking for the use of this, looking as an alternative. Even from medicinal is not gaining any additional tax dollars. So this is purely recreational.
But 3 months. $22.3 million, not in cannabis sales, in cannabis sales tax revenue.
Correct. A 52%
$22.3 million.
And that's only on recreational because medicinal is still not taxed.
52% increase over receipts of the prior 3 months. That is
Good
huge.
business.
That is huge. And, I have to ask the question, can Mary Jane help Mary Land resolve the budget problem?
Bravo.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's making a contribution, as you see, automatically. You talk about the tax. It's not going to change. You're not going to see a reduction. I think you're going to see a gradual increase and trend into a level.
Because this is a luxury tax.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I mean, $22.3 million. That's, do the math. $22 million here, $22 million there. Before long, you're talking about some serious money.
And it's one of those luxury tax or sin taxes in some cases that you can increase and people are willing to pay.
Right.
That's why packs of cigarettes are $20 a pop some places, right? When they used to, I remember when I used to buy them from my father when I was little, it was like $3 or $4. Now you talk about 20. So I think that increase will give them another revenue generated through tax dollars.
Yeah.
But is the juice worth the squeeze?
I don't think we're seeing any medical impact right now. And a lot of that money
Would we?
also, well, yes, a lot of that money is also going into additional research that was set not to be in place when it became legalized. So a portion of that money is allocated and dedicated for additional medical research to make sure that there isn't lasting impacts on the health of individuals. But we are seeing some of the positives as well when we look at some of the medical use of.
Well, medical use, I'm talking about recreational use. Have we just made Maryland a huge petri dish for, is it really addictive?
When you say recreational, you got to understand people still use it for medicinal uses even though it's recreational, because that doesn't mean you have to go through and get a license and buy the card and pay those additional fees.
I get it.
You're paying the taxes. So you're still, when you have aches and pains and you decide to go into a dispensary and purchase cannabis to address your aches and pains, even though you're paying the recreational tax, you're still using it for medicinal use.
Well, but what percentage of the population? I know we can't answer that.
No,
but I can't imagine that's a high percentage of the people that are using. Everybody that I know that is using it for recreation is indeed using it for recreation.
And again, I think some people have been using it for such a long time illegally as well. So we're seeing
They're just on the record.
they're on the record. So they've been using cannabis to address their medical issues illegally for years or decades. Now they're using it legally, and they're going through a recreational facility, which now takes the crime off the street and takes off some of the illicit sales that are happening in the communities. So I think we are seeing some benefits, but again, you can argue pros and cons both ways.
And I don't think we have a large enough sample size.
No, you're going to need decades of research.
Absolutely.
We're still selling alcohol and tobacco.
Right.
so.
But I mean, if you think about that, and I understand the curve's going to level off at some point, but if we have another, even 30% increase in the next 3 months, and then, I mean, $22 million a quarter.
Well, there's a number of licenses that are still on hold and still haven't been distributed across the state of Maryland for
You
recreation.
have access issues in some
Right,
places.
right.
I mean,
yeah.
you're talking about minimally $100 million tax revenue
Right.
in the course of one fiscal year.
Yes.
That's.
But wouldn't you think that it would continue to go up for a while? Because
I think it will.
There's still a stigma of it being legal that some people may not have crossed that
Right.
hurdle.
And also, there's an entry level that still hasn't really materialized. Again, there's licenses that still need to be distributed. There's licenses in people's hands that have not even opened their doors for their businesses. So access is going to become greater. There's still licenses that are going to be for on-premises use that you can use in bars and restaurants. So there's still a gradual increase to access that's going to happen and going to allow greater people to partake, as well as some controls that are going to come in place over time that's going to balance some of that out. But the trend is only looking upward.
Yeah. And just for our viewers, Terrence is not the FlipSide weed man.
No.
He did serve on the Medical Marijuana Commission, so that is why I referenced him as such.
And I'm on the advisory board currently of medicinal and recreational use. So
There we go.
I'm careful with
And
my words.
I think one of the benefits of this, and again, I still wonder if the juice is worth the squeeze. Think of all the snack foods that will be sold. I mean, Utz potato chips,
Listen.
Cheetos.
Jim,
they
this
gotta
is the
be
highlight of your year because you've killed this
Listen.
topic.
You get a gym, a Krispy Kreme, or any donut location,
yeah.
and a dispensary on the same block.
Bada bing.
That's it. You got the cycle.
So wait a minute. You had the audacity to say Krispy Kreme in our community?
Oh yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's a Crumpy's, right? You got to put a
I
dispensary next to the
respect the
Crumpy's.
business. I respect the
Put it. That's
business.
right. That's right.
All right, gentlemen, moving on from the weed ban.
Cannabis.
Hogan and also Brooks are battling for Jewish voters. Jim, what say you?
Well, okay, sure.
Right.
I get that. Why wouldn't they? I think it's interesting that there's enough of a there that a newspaper decided to pull that out and print that as a story, and I wonder if that story would have made it had there not been all of this stuff going on.
The conflict.
Yeah, the conflict. So yeah.
We've seen it at the president level, right, with Harris, and they talk with using her husband as
Who's
well.
strong in regards to support of Israel.
Right. So I don't think there's anything there.
Yeah, I think, I would agree. I don't think there's anything necessarily really there. I don't think there's probably a lot more effort than normal. I do think, though, that from a strategic standpoint, it makes sense because there are a lot of people in this country that are on one side or the other of this issue in terms of Hamas versus Israel, and I think that in even though this district is still a little divided, the fact of the matter is the district has more people that would likely support Israel and the Jewish community than.
I just think it's a landmine because you don't know who stands hit where.
No, you don't.
So I think that's a risky path to take. So
Yeah. And it's not a major part of either one of their platforms. It's kind of
No,
one of those
it's
outlier issues that they both are dancing around. Next topic, gentlemen, voter scam in Maryland. Top election officials warn about fraudulent text. Terrence, what say you?
we're going to hear it, right?
Right.
we had the conversation. All forms of collection of data is skewed and susceptible to error. It's about minimizing the risk and
Well,
minimize
now
the
this
error.
one is about the scammers that are, and I know the issue you're talking about. This is about the scammers sending a text saying you're not registered to vote, and then they lead you to this site, and it's basically a phishing scam.
Right. To
Okay.
steal your information.
Right. And on the other end of that, again, once we turn to technology, then you become susceptible to all kinds of scams.
all the ills that are
right.
out
You
there.
know, we remember it happened with the telephone, and you
Right.
know, we hear it all the time. So I just think using technology opens us up to a greater risk of
And
fraud
scams have
as
moved
well.
on, right? Because
Right.
I mean, you would have the phone scams of doing pretty much the same thing.
Well,
Absolutely. And
It's just that now your cell phone is now the vehicle
Right.
instead of your home phone.
and we're seeing it. I probably get 10, 15 texts, you know, sometimes a day from now. People are selling your cell phone number versus selling your
Right.
email. So
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, I remember, I mean, back when I was doing phone scams, it was, you know, calling the neighbor and saying, is your refrigerator running? And they say yes, and you say, go catch it. Or do you have Prince Albert in a can, let him out, you know? That's the trifecta of jokes for today. just so you
You've
know.
been on fire tonight.
I've
my
been on
friend.
fire. All right.
All right, next topic. Maryland sues.
Wait a minute,
ship
before we
owners.
get off of that,
Yes, sir.
Illinois, Georgia, Pennsylvania are also experiencing this, and I would suspect that this is going to be a nationwide thing before we reach election.
right, and this pig butchering, you know,
Yeah.
is the new scam, and it's not happening here locally. It's actually happening internationally. We're just being targeted. So
Yeah. All right, we're moving on, gentlemen.
Yeah, we've only got 4 minutes,
All
I'm
right,
told.
very good. Last one then. Maryland sues ship owners over the fatal bridge disaster. That's obvious.
That's
somebody got to pay the bill.
a great theory. I'll be interested to see
If a
what.
dime comes out of
That's
that.
exactly right, because these ship owners, at least as far as I'm told, they have all of these ways that they can mitigate the risk and shield themselves from liability.
And have this tied up in courts for years.
Have this tied up in courts for years, and they're never going to pay a cent.
And it's not the ship owners; it's their insurance policy. Let's be clear. They're not suing the ship owners directly. You want the money from their insurers, right? And this is the way you have to go about it. You have to put suit forward for their insurance policies to kick in and to get some kind of settlement out of it. I don't think they want to sue them personally. I think they want the insurance policy to help fit some of the bill.
Put some of the bill.
Put some of it, yes.
Yeah, but it may be a generation before this has an outcome.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see it in our lifetime, frankly.
All right, gentlemen, we've had a little bit too much fun with some of these topics tonight, but we are shutting it off here, my friends, and leaving a little meat on the bone for our viewers for next week.
Excellent.
All right. Well, that is all the time that we have for tonight. We hope that you'll like us on Facebook and follow us on X. But more importantly, we hope you join us again next week for another episode of The Flip Side.